Hello, everybody. Welcome to another week of Ask an Expert. I have the biggest smile on my face already because I'm here with Kate Pilcher, and Kate is the founder of a company called Globetrotting, which if you don't know of it, we'll get into it. But Kate is also just the loveliest human. And Mercedes, who runs our community in Australia, connected us with Kate. And from the first sentence was telling us how much she adores Kate and how wonderful she is. And so I have been especially looking forward to this conversation, but also we get to spend an hour talking about incredible equestrian experiences and vacations and cultural experiences happening all over the world that Kate has been on and helps other people go on. So it's going to be a good 60 minutes, and it's just me here today. I am solo hosting, which selfishly, I'm excited I get all the questions to myself this time. But Kate, thank you so much for being willing to do this with us.
Oh, thank you, Jessa. It's an absolute pleasure. And as we spoke off air, the feeling's mutual with Miss Mercedes. She is, as you said, a very bright, shining light, and like attracts like. And I think she has created the most amazing Ride IQ Australian community. I mean, I literally, look at me. I'm like a fangirl. I have this on, and my eldest daughter rides in the Ride IQ shirts. And yeah, I think that her guerrilla marketing with all her posters around every one-day event that I see on the back of toilet doors. I mean, I would happily have her work for Globetrotting as well, but I promise I won't poach her from you.
She is such an absolute gem. And I was telling you that my perception of Australians, now that we have a community there, is just that they are the kindest, warmest, most loving people. And I think there probably is truth to that. But like you said, Mercedes has really made that happen and fostered such a beautiful community over there. So someday Kinsey and I will make it over there to experience it for ourselves. But for now, we're feeling the warmth from all the way across the globe.
Oh, I'm glad, because it's there for sure.
So you are in Australia. What time is it where you are?
So it's 8:04, tea 20 minutes of the girls going to school. So I had to lock myself in the office so I didn't have any unwarranted visitors. And yeah, it's probably, I generally get up at 4:30 in the morning. It's starting to come into summer here, so we ride really early in the morning. And then the day sort of rolls in from there.
Oh, amazing. So everyone, please, we'll put it in the show notes, but the website is it globetrotting.com.au? Is that correct?
Absolutely. That's exactly right.
If for no other reason, go to look at the photos and watch the video of Kate and her husband, Steven, and their 3 children. It is just so, it's like a trailer of the most beautiful family. So Kate, tell us a little more about your family and how riding and work fit into your life right now.
Yeah, good question. So, we've got 3 girls. So my eldest is 11 and Birdie is 9 and Pops is 5. And we live on 30 acres here on the Sunshine Coast, which is in Queensland in Australia. And so it's sort of Truce Green Hills, rolling hills, and we back on to Mapleton National Park. So quite often every Saturday we will be seen in the national park trail riding. So to us, riding out is first and foremost. So, and we don't sort of stop to walk down hills. Like, the girls just have to keep up. And yeah, we feel, Stephen and I feel, that horse riding is a life skill for our girls. So like, they learn to swim, they need to learn to ride. And that involves obviously being able to trail ride, and, they have lessons only when they started to be sort of 6, they'll have, 1 or 2 lessons a week. And then that has made them really formidable and gritty riders, which I'm really proud to say. It's a lot of effort. There's a lot of whinging. There's a lot of make believe and Simon Says, and, we take beans off trees and, pretend we're cops and robbers and things like that. I have lots of lollies in my pockets, especially with Pops, but we try and make it fun. And I feel like you know, by and by, if anyone's listening to this to try and their kids aren't really enjoying their riding, I've, you know, been through the ups and downs of trying to get kids to enjoy riding. And I feel for me, it's about riding out and having adventure. And, you know, we now, like I was riding with the girls in South Africa in July, and, you know, they know the trail riding etiquette. They can't pass the guests and all of that. It's now a delight to ride, especially with the two older girls. They're, you know, they're up there with all of our advanced riders, being able to really hold their own in the saddle and ride different horses, which is just really cool, because all of that sort of blood, sweat and tears that comes into getting them to be that, now that they're safe. So, you know, to us, for them to be able to participate on our Globetrotting rides is a really important thing. And fortunately, our guests love traveling with them, which is crazy because it's a hot mess sometimes. Like, they can fight with, I mean, you've got a sister, you'd know, like, you can fight with the best of them, but at the end of the day, I love that travel is broadening their mind and they're curious, and they can, you know, we went, for example, in Tanzania, we went to a Maasai village and bought a goat, and the girls were sitting down with all the little Maasai kids. You know, that's just, you know, horse riding and the beautiful horses are a portal to getting to these, you know, transformational experiences. And we really don't take that lightly. Sorry, that was a really long answer, but it's that's sort of foundationally where we come from, and we're a family-based business, and I just love that.
That is so beautiful. And, oh, I'm hearing echo. Are you hearing echo from me? I think
No,
it's
I'm
better.
not hearing echo. Yeah.
Okay. That is so beautiful. What a gift for them to be able to travel, but also to be taught the way to ride the way that you and your husband are teaching them. Like, when you said gritty riders, I felt proud of them, and I've never met them. So I would imagine that as their parent or as guests who get to go on trips with them, it's just inspiring to see the skills that they've developed. That's very cool. So let's go back to the beginning of this business. It's from what I've read, this started with a quarter life crisis. Tell us, like, the origin story and whether Stephen was around from day one. Just kind of like take us from then to now and how it came to life.
Absolutely. Well, so here in Australia, I went to a boarding school, so for 5 years. So we were on a cotton property. I was brought up on like the pancake flat plains of the Darling Downs, and horses, when I was at boarding school, weren't really available to me. My father and my mum were riders, but when you go to boarding school, there's really no time. I'd never had lessons anyway. I was very much a bush rider, like, you know, heels out, toes out, elbows out. It was probably pretty ugly to watch, but I loved it. But then I didn't ride through my high school years. We had horses at home, but, you know, now looking back, it's not riding. And then went to university. I didn't have a gap year just because I knew that I wouldn't probably go back if I started traveling. I knew that I just instinctively knew that I wouldn't. So I did a business degree and did summer school. So I completed as quickly as possible and worked in small businesses as I was at uni, and then traveled to Europe. At this stage, Stephen was my boyfriend. So we met when I was 20, I think, and he had already traveled, and he was in a family property out west. But we, you know, still were very young and lived independently. So I went over to Europe and did that real pedestrian travel. It's a rite of passage here in Australia, where a lot of people, when a lot of 18-year-olds, they either, or when they finish uni, go over to Europe, get their 2-year working visa and sort of leapfrog across Europe. So to me, it was, you know, I think I was a low-level drunk nearly the whole time, and just literally traveled, but not really traveled. Came home, and again, Steve and I were still together. And then I started working as a journalist and sales in a local newspaper. And then as a freelance journalist for a couple of national magazines, I was invited to go over to Kenya in the Masai Mara and do and write and photograph the wildebeest migration, which is pretty much, I had never been to a developing country, and I landed in this, you know, amazing sort of, you know, parallel universe where I am riding a, you know, crafty chestnut mare. I still remember her name. Her name was Witch, and we literally traveled for 7 nights, moving from point to point across the Masai Mara. And I had a full out-of-body experience, to be fair. Now looking back on it as well, it just changed me. I got proposed to by a Maasai warrior, which was hilarious. Which was, and Dad, you know, my father was there with me, so he you know, tried to negotiate the dowry, but I was, you know, completely, it was just complete otherworldly. We rode across the Mara River, which is like this tea-stained, murky, ugly, big sort of snake that winds through the Masai Mara Game Reserve. And, you know, there was crocodiles on the banks. There were hippos honking upstream. And I'd never felt so alive in my life. Like, you could throw anything at me and I just leaned into it. I got home and everything sort of felt out of whack. At that stage, I had a magazine of my own. My parents got divorced. So right up until that point, you know, I was giving Stephen all the clues to propose. We'd been together, because I was 25 at that stage, for 5 years. We had a mortgage. We had a beautiful dog called Harry Noodle Pie, who had way too many names. And it all just didn't fit. It just felt, and it was nothing to do with Stephen, but it all just felt like I needed to run away and be anonymous. I felt like I'd already pre-planned my white picket fence life. And I didn't really, it just didn't fit. And so poor Stephen, he proposed. We went to the snow and he proposed, which he thought was what I wanted. And I broke his heart on the snowfields and said no. And he was so calm. For a guy, you know, a lot of guys would find that really hard. And he just said, look, I will, next time it's your turn. And so, you know, then I left the magazine that I owned, and, you know, I put an editor on, and I went over to Chile and Argentina for 6 months and pretty much hopped from saddle to saddle. I rode and worked on an estancia that was in the Andes in Patagonia, Argentina, where you had to ride in. So it was really vast and no electricity, and horse is king. There's no fences. You live and breathe by daylight hours. You know, everything is self-sufficient there. And I just learned the gaucho way, but not the Demal rationale, which is the soft touch, is what it sort of translates to. So I, you know, slept out under the stars and wrote and journaled and photographed. And then from there, I went back to Kenya, and I worked as a backup horse riding guide there, which was phenomenal. And that's where I really got to meet guests from different riding agencies from the UK, because that was a really popular, at that stage, the UK, you know, they knew about horse riding holidays, but in Australia, it was a really new concept. And so I learned and, you know, rubbed shoulders with all the beautiful guests and understood what they wanted out of a horse riding holiday. And I learned Swahili and just, you know, loved my time there. And then I rode in Botswana. So I was probably away for about 9 months and jumping. I probably had like a day or two without being in the saddle. Like, I was ferocious in terms of learning about horse culture, learning the language, being a better rider, being a better guide. And then I got told to come home. Dad was like, you need to come home and face the music, which was fair enough, because I had to start being an adult, I guess. So I came home, picked up the magazine, and Steve and I sort of started to have, you know, we'd had a break. And then all of my sort of polo community, so I was playing polo at that stage, wanted to know what I'd been doing. And I said I'd been away, and they didn't obviously have the time nor the money to do a quarter life crisis, but they wanted to do a portion of what I'd done. So I took them over to the place where I was guiding in Kenya, and Steve came. So it was the first time he'd been to Africa. And it was literally, I don't know, day 5. They have these showers in Africa when you're on safari, where it's like a hot water bucket and, you know, just a canvas sort of tent. And so I was having a shower, and literally a lightning bolt moment saying that I needed to propose to Steve there and then. Like, it just was, hadn't even thought about it prior. And so, yeah, with the towel wrapped around me, I sort of, he was sitting outside on a chair on the tent, and I proposed to him. And he said, I should really want to say no to you now, Kate, but he said yes. So that is the full circle, and what a patient man he is.
I was not prepared for that story. Like I said that video on your site is like a trailer, but that is the most, I mean, my eyes are a little bit misty. Those were very brave choices that you made, and that Steve made too. It's just like you got to do this thing that was so true to you. And I think it can be scary to kind of like deviate from what is expected, both by like the norm of society, but also, like you said, you kind of expected the white picket fence proposals coming up thing, and then it just wasn't ringing true at that moment. But how special that it happened the way that it did. So from there, was it like pretty clear after taking Steve and your polo friends on a short trip that you wanted to start facilitating these trips as a business? Or how did Globetrotting come to be from there?
Yeah, good question. So once that first sort of exploratory ride where I took guests, I had a magazine, obviously Salt magazine, where I was selling advertising, writing, photographing. It was an incredibly successful magazine here on the coast. And so I started Globetrotting, which sounds strange, but back then to have only purely online business was quite, and to name, like it was quite new at that stage. So I ran Globetrotting alongside Salt magazine, mainly because foundationally for Globetrotting, we need to road test each and every ride. So I need to, or Laura, my colleague, or any of my colleagues need to actually go to the ride destination and ride, for a considerable amount of time to get a sense of them, if they tick the box, and we very much, quite often they don't tick the box. We do a lot of due diligence before we get there. So with the birth of Globetrotting, it was a really slow burn because I had to, fit that in between editions of the magazine to go and see new rides. So when I launched, I obviously had the rides in Argentina and Chile, and then in Kenya and Botswana because I'd road tested them. And then I started within Australia, road testing rides within Australia, and the website slowly, really slowly, like incrementally with rides grew when I could, and word of mouth. And again, we didn't have social media to really sort of escalate that audience. And so by probably, I think I had been running Globetrotting maybe for 5 years. And I remember my dad was very much a business mentor to me. And he said, when you want to do Globetrotting more than the magazine, then it's time to sell. And this is, like so many universal pinpoints throughout my life. I remember saying to Steve, I want to sell the magazine. Literally half an hour later, the phone rang, and we'd been running the magazine for 10 years and never had a conversation like this. And a lady rang and said she wanted to buy the magazine. So we facilitated that sale and started full time with Globetrotting, because the more I was putting in, the more it was getting back. I could just tell like it was, and by that stage, I think we had Finn. So we had a young family. Steve was a full-time electrician. And yeah, it just sort of started from there. And, the next step was we offered an internship, and Laura Ray, who's also really good friends with Mercedes, was an intern for us when she was traveling around America and like logging on Greyhound buses, and she's mental. And she's a one-star eventer. She's a very, very clever human being. And she came on as an intern, and then we employed her full time. And as soon as we employed her full time, the business just started just escalating, which was so cool. Like what you said, like attracts like, and I feel that it's a very niche market. And we had to do a lot of education in the Australian market, because I guess people's pain points are, well, can I bring my own horse? The horses won't be as good as mine. I don't want to do nose to tail. I want to be able to trot and canter, like anything that we would all think. So it's re-educating people on the early days to say, actually, these horses, you'll want to take them home. Like, they know this country. They will make you feel alive. They will make you feel that they will take you to the edge of the world and back. You don't want to ride your quarter horse or your Australian stock horse in, Argentina. I want to ride a criollo horse. I want to ride, the oldest bred quarter horse in the world is a criollo. I want to ride that breed of horse. I want to ride it in their traditional tack. I want to ride alongside the gauchos. I want to dance with them. I want to break bread with them. I want to get beneath the surface of that country. And so once we started educating people, and they started going on the rides, it was self-perpetuating, because once you do one ride, and it's true, like once you do one ride, it's like the penny drops and you're like, I can't holiday. I can't see a country, another landscape any other way than from the back of a horse. Sorry, I get very passionate about it. You can tell.
Don't be sorry. Anything like short of going there and experiencing it yourself, you are just such a great storyteller and really like bring this to life. It's incredible. We had the part about how special it is to be on a horse that is from the place that you're visiting makes a lot of sense, because how you're describing it, it's like these connections are so special to make, not like with the gauchos and the people and the other guests, but also I'm sure with the horse and experiencing the culture, which the horse is part of. That relates to a question we got ahead of time that I found really interesting. It's across all the unique cultures that you've traveled to and been on horseback in, what are some of the similarities and differences that you've noticed regarding people's connection to and or relationship with their horses? Sorry, I sounds like I can't read, but hopefully
no, you can. And I read between the lines, so I get it.
Okay.
So you're saying, what are the differences and what are the similarities between how horse and rider are throughout different cultures?
Totally.
Well, I mean, a perfect example, because I've just come back from Western Mongolia, literally riding where you can see the Russian border. It was nuts. I don't think I actually looked on a map before we went, but we rode, as part of a Golden Eagle festival. So picture riding, with a beautiful female eagle on your arm, like, dressed in fur in the local dell. It was an exploratory ride. And so I've ridden in Mongolia before, but so the Mongols treat their horses really differently. So to them, the horses are their wings. Like, that's the only way that they can really pass from A to B. But they don't, boot their horses. They don't rug their horses. They don't unsaddle their horse when they finish riding. They don't wash their horses. And who am I to say? Because this was a really good lesson for me. Not that I haven't seen it all the time, but our beautiful ride partner, Katie, who worked at the Mongol Derby for a very, very long time and is, ridden in Mongolia for a long time. The way, who's to say we have the right way? Do you know what I mean? They're generationally being with horses. You think the Chinggis Khan, and, it is, century stuff. And, in Australia is a very young country. So why would I come there and think that I would know better if a horse was lame, how, you should do this or you should do that? When Katie said, which is so wonderful, she asked them, like, what do you think's, wrong with this footsore horse? And they say, this is how we would treat it. And Katie obviously then said, well, that's great. And look, if you want, I have some butte here if you want it, but it's just a lovely way, because I feel like sometimes the superiority of what we think we know is the best way isn't exactly the best way. Or like at the end of the day, we were riding back through rivers. These horses are watered once a day. And please, everyone listening, horse welfare is paramount to us. So don't think that we would ever, endorse a ride where horses aren't number one. But the developing countries, they just do things differently. And so they wouldn't let us water the horses as we were riding home, and the horses were desperate to drink. But you have to trust that they know their herd of horses, and they will water their horses once they've cooled down. They cool them down with their saddles on, girths loose. and then they will water their horses at like 10 at night. And I'm not to say to make them, the guests are saying you need to water the horses. That's actually a really wonderful way of just, stepping back and knowing that they know what's best for their horses. So that's one example of what I've seen. And in terms of that's the differences. In terms of the similarities, I think that across any horse culture, everyone that sits on a horse gives you presence. Like, you are in the flow state. You are absolutely one with nature. And I have seen that across every culture. And especially when I can't speak the language, I know the unadulterated joy that it gives people to be astride their horse, and the gift that they keep us safe. Sorry, I get teary. They keep us safe from start to finish is absolutely a global, union. And we're all cut from the same cloth, and we all, are doing it for these sentient beings that give us so much without asking for anything in return. Is just, absolutely mind-blowing if you to really think about it on a granular level.
It's offering us this human experience that is like so deep and at a core level. And as I get older, it feels like with every day, I'm just like, how do I find that unbridled joy of childhood again? And it is so just like confusing to think about. And what you're describing is finding this environment and situation experience that puts you in that present human experience, just to like feel those, emotions again, which is something just so special to be able to unlock for people. And I can see why you like the work that you do, because to be able to offer that to people is exceptional. So you're describing how different cultures practice horse management in different ways. Are there, through all of these experiences, are there any like horse management approaches that you have brought back with you to your horses or your riding in Australia? Or is it more kind of the high level understanding that there's not one right way to do these things?
No, that's a really good question. I've never been asked that. I know when I get home, I feel like my horses can be a little bit mollycoddled. So I'm sort of just started getting into eventing probably about 4 or 5 years ago. So I was a polo player, and then Laura turned me to the dark side, and I've started eventing, and I can't get enough of it, to be fair. And sometimes I probably mollycoddle my horses a little bit too much, and that's and humanize them a little bit too much as well. So I definitely take that back. I love also, when we're riding in America, I love that they hobble their horses. I think that's a really wonderful thing to teach your horse, because out on a trail, rather than tying them up, to be able to hobble them, I love. And they hobble in Mongolia as well, which I think is fantastic. So that's probably the things that I have taken back. But yeah, and then something that may work in the Camargue in France may not work here. So it just depends on, different areas. But when you say like unlocking that unbridled joy for you as a kid, I agree with that. Like, I get swept up in eventing and competing, and, so I could sometimes, spend all my rides in the arena, as much as I hate to say that. And I really have to. And then when I go out into our national park, which is gobsmackingly beautiful, it just resets everything. And also, as we all know, that's so important for the horse's head, not only ours as well. So I'm also keep that in my pocket to make sure, even with my girls, that we don't get wrapped up in just lessons and lessons and lessons, and making sure we just do it for the pure joy of it. And that's a really important thing that I'm learning right now.
Does hobble mean ground tie?
Where they like hobble their 2 front legs. So we have hobble belts in Australia. So, and in one of our ranch rides, you just carry a hobble belt. So, and then the horses they can still move with, like, they can still, F off with hobbles, but they have to be pretty talented. But yeah, it's just a really cool tool that they use.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I've never seen it, but it sounds like it's a similar purpose to ground tying, which is just like, if you're not tying them up, how do you keep them in one spot?
Yeah, that's it. Exactly.
One thing that I'm really interested in is you're explaining being the founder of a business and a mother, and also having time to enjoy life, even outside of the rides when you're traveling, like going to the national park and being on a hack with your family. Do you, so my perception is that you have these things beautifully balanced. Is that an accurate perception? And how do you accomplish that? Help me.
I love it. Well, it takes a SWAT team, to be fair. It's not just me. So I have an amazing team, and we've actually just put someone else on because I wasn't coping, and I want to be really transparent with this because we'd just done a massive ride in Africa. So we were away for 6 weeks. We rode in Namibia, Kenya, Tanzania, Botswana and South Africa. We took the kids, and then we had guests on each departure. And so we had some guests do the whole entire thing. At the end of that ride, I was an empty shell, just because having to have your mum hat on, your guiding hat on, and then running a business remotely puts a lot of strain on relationships. And unfortunately, and I say this really honestly, I would probably give more to my guests than my kids, because they're paying there to be there, and they're there because we're guiding it. So it was a really good lesson for Steve and I to realize that that's too much for a young family to go away and, do all that. And when I got home, I resented Globetrotting. I couldn't look at it. I couldn't write an email. I couldn't even take a call. Like I was ready to sell. I was ready to just, I was so burnt out. My light was extinguished. And so I took a lot of just 2 weeks off, still being in the business, but not being in the business. For me, I have a very morning meditation practice. So I'm up at 4:30 every morning, and I meditate and walk and write and all of that. And so I just found my way back, but it wasn't something, again, it was because I have an amazing team that I could have that space and step away. And yeah, that's the only way that it's been able to. And also in my 20s and 30s, I was a real hustler. I was like, let's get Globetrotting, global. Now I feel that I can work on the blue sky stuff. And I have, as I said, the team is, that we have is so amazing that I don't feel that I have to be involved in the inner bowels of Globetrotting, which is kind of cool. And so I get to sort of dip in and out. But it is definitely a hot mess, probably 90% of the time.
Well, I really appreciate that transparency, because having you lead an inspiring life as a founder and a mother and a wife, and seeing kind of behind the curtain that sometimes things are challenging and require a reset like that. I'll speak for myself.
Yeah.
In moments like that, I will feel inspired that there is a way to the other side, and that it's not like, oh, you failed because you reached this point that you feel, burnt out. That there's just a way to travel through that experience. Versus feeling like you've hit a failure point.
Absolutely. I agree.
It's really, I think that comparison is so tough, because we all look to people who are doing such an exceptional job. There's a quote from when I was young, one of my favorite quotes was, "Comparison is the thief of joy," which really it is. But humanizing people who you look up to and understanding that they are experiencing challenges as well really helps navigate through things.
I really agree. And that's why I'm, all about being open, even with the girls. If they are having a hard time, it's okay. Maybe how I was parented, it was sort of stiff upper lip, but now it's okay to say I am having a hard time, and to even just to verbalize that is really good. And I think that if I can model that, then it's going to help, you know, people listening now and, you know, my kids as well.
Definitely. How did you develop your meditation practice? Was that something you picked up in traveling? Just I know so many people would like to have that be part of their lives.
Yeah, good question. So I did an article. So we've got an amazing Buddhist institute up here. It's the oldest, I think, in Queensland, if not Australia. And so I started meditating with them probably when I did an article for them for the magazine in my 20s. And then I have sort of had a, you know, an everyday daily practice probably for the last 15 years. And there's, you know, I've dipped into heaps of different types of meditation. And now I do breathwork meditation, which is really amazing. But I just know, because I am an overachiever, that my brain can, you know, go wild. And so I needed something that could sedate it for, and then that carries on throughout the whole day. And it makes me a better boss, a better mother, a better wife, a better sister. And I can tell when I don't do it. Sometimes, like if I'm guiding rides, it's hard. But again, I find when I'm on my rides, I'm meditating during the day, because you're on a horse and you're in nature and you're in your happy place. So it's generally more the ho-hum of everyday life that I, you know, can feel the noise sort of coming in. And so that's where I've started. And yeah, I mean, it's very easier said than done that, you know, go meditate. It's hard, you know, it's not something that, you know, but it's something that serves me really well. And the free riding as well. It just helps. And I'm sort of big believer of law of attraction. So, you know, what you think comes. So, and like attracts like and all of that. So that's just been, you know, foundational to how we have, you know, the amazing abundant life that we do have, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
Are there other practices or hobbies that are pretty consistent in your life that contribute to filling your cup?
No, probably that, and just the riding. I mean, I do Pilates just because if not, my body would break. And so I do that every day, and I do that on a live stream, like on an online, because I can't. It's sort of riding and then the Pilates meditation, riding, and then Pilates. And that obviously depends on the comings of the day with the kids and stuff like that. So that's probably the main, you know, 3 things that fill my cup at the end of the day.
Yeah. And it's great to be able to have them like planned out, especially you're having to get up very early to accommodate it. But to have them kind of front loaded on your day so that they are more likely to fit in. Dickie Waygood, who some people might be familiar with because he has some Ride IQ recordings. He's a coach who has led 20 odd teams to podium finishes in eventing and dressage for Britain. And he told us that the difference between a winning team and other teams is that winning teams have a system and the discipline to stick to it. So when people talk to me about their life systems, I always lean in a bit because I think it's such a pattern for people who have found something, who have just found a good cadence of things that work for them. They have recognized the system and they have the discipline to stick to it for themselves.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I go to at 8 o'clock, just to preface that. I am like, you know, conked out at 8 to be able to get up. If anyone decides to start that rhythm of getting up really early, you have to be in bed really early or it just does not work.
Totally. Coach Sando inspired me to put a tracker on. So now I can see how my sleep is. And that has really helped me be more diligent about the falling asleep time. Because you can assume that you got your 8 hours. And if you were distracted before you really fell asleep, it does not add up to the 8 hours expected. Okay. I'm curious, just to preface some of the questions I'm going to get into about the business. How long has Globetrotting existed now?
Good question. Laura probably knows. So So it started when I was 25 and I'm 42. What's that?
If Kinsey was here, she would tell us.
I know.
Is that like 17-ish, 18-ish?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's been around for a long time. And how big is your team now working on Globetrotting?
Oh, good question. So Steve is our CFO. We work in so many different currencies. So when people see our website, each ride is based in a different currency based on the ride partner, because we can't hold that currency because of fluctuating exchange rates. So Steve, Laura, me, Rowena, Steph, and Amy and Katie, 7. We've got Katie, who's based in the UK. And then luckily we've just onboarded 2 new staff members, and they are the exact right skill set, and they live on the Sunshine Coast. So yeah, that's a team, a small but mighty team of 7.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's very cool. And how many different destinations are you sending people to?
Oh, good question. So all I know is that we say we go to every continent except for Antarctica. So Laura is my nuts and bolts person. I think, I don't know, maybe 50 rides I think we probably have, but there's still some destinations that we can't wait to go to, like Jordan. I really want to go to, and Cuba. We're looking at an exploratory ride there. So I ride with some of my guests that are like 70 and I'm 42. And sometimes I think I'm running out of time, that I want to ride every destination. And then I look at them and go, hang on, I've got so long. So that's where I said that I was really a hustler when I was, younger. I was ferocious, like pushing. Now I know, I guess it's age, that I can take a step back and those destinations will come. And when we do launch a destination, we invite our Globetrotters to come as an exploratory ride. So they come with us and then they can give us all the feedback and share with us. The disclaimer is, like, we do as much due diligence, but it may be pear-shaped. The horses may not be okay, but they love the coming for the exploratory ride. So, that's always a fun element to the business.
How many rides these days are you and Steve going on each year?
Oh, good. Yeah. So we do one big guided ride a year, and that's with the family. And then I generally do 1 or 2 independently, and Steve hangs at home with the kids. So this is obviously all, post-COVID. So that's generally, I love traveling with Steve. Like, to me, home is where my family is, if that makes sense. So we can be, on an glacier in Iceland, and if I've got my girls and Steve there, I could stay there forever. So it's really important. Or if one of the family members are with me, I find that I just love that. And again, we're getting to an age with the girls that they can do that as well. Like Finn did Namibia, so that we've got one of the toughest commercial rides in the world, which is a ride in Namibia, which is on the west coast of Africa. We did it for our honeymoon, Steve and I, I don't know how many years ago. And then at 11, each girl gets to go on a ride. And so Finn turned 11, and this is like a 250 kilometer, maybe more ride, and where you ride 50 Ks a day. Like, it is hardcore. And it's across the Skeleton Desert, and you go right to the ocean. The Skeleton Coast, sorry. And Finn rode that with me and Laura and 9 of our guests, and she did not miss a day. Like, at lunchtime, she'd be tired and she's like, Mom, I don't think I'll ride. I'm like, babe, that's okay. You don't have to ride. There was a support truck, and a lot of our guests were going in the support truck because it's, hardcore riding. And then after lunch, it's the only time she was allowed Coca-Cola. She'd have a Coke. She's like, no, I think I'll ride. And then that afternoon, she's like, that was the best ride yet. I'm so glad I did it, So it was, and we're talking full gallops, jumping ditches, weaving between, brushes. And her seat didn't move. And that was a really cool moment for me to be able to sit at the back and guide and not really have to worry about her. And then, around the campfire at night, there was a lot of shenanigans. She probably learnt some more colorful language than she should have, but she'd end up falling asleep, beside the campfire as, we were dancing under the stars and things like that. But it was a really nice thing to do, and I can't wait to do that with Birdie when she turns 11 and then Poppy when she turns 11.
Oh, get out of town that she chose that ride. How did you feel when that's what she suggested?
Well, I spoke to the ride partner and they said she would be the youngest girl to do it. And I knew, again, she's really gritty and really resilient, but she had an exit strategy, which I liked, that she could go in a truck if she just, because I don't want them to resent it. That's that real fine line of pushing your child or giving them the option without them just getting burnt out. I'm very conscious of it. But she just took it in a stride. She was, we had this race that was talked about for 5 days, and she's like, and the guide, when we knew the race was on, he'd do this, like the whoop, and so she was waiting for him at every moment. She's like, Mum, I think he's going to do it now. And then she's so fiercely competitive too. She came fourth. I beat her, and she was so dirty. It was so funny.
That's amazing. So the girls are in Pony Club, right?
Yeah. We have the most amazing pony club here. I am El Presidente. I don't really do anything.
Gosh.
Yeah, it's fun.
Oh, of course you took on being the president of the pony club too. So will they claim a specific discipline? Like, do you think they're going to want to be competitive in eventing or a specific discipline, or how is that kind of playing out?
Yeah, I think Finn, definitely. She's eventing with Laura and I at the moment, doing 60 centimeters. And she's learnt some really hard lessons in terms of, as we all know, horses breaking down and having to start another horse. And then, she had a severe accident 2 years ago. We do a lot of trail riding here, obviously, and we went down to a state called South Australia and did the Kidman Trail. So it was the 3 girls and Steve and I, and Steve would move the gooseneck each night, and we would ride 30 to 40 Ks. And Finn was 9 and Birds was 7. And then it was on one of the second last day, we'd nearly finished the whole, 270 kilometer trail, and it was tough going. Anyway, the girls were riding their Welsh ponies bitless in the halters. Again, just the way it happened, because the horses were, were tired because, anyway, a lot of endurance riders ride bitless, and we were last riding down a wheat paddock, and Finn's like, let's do one more canter up the hill. And her sister was in front. Her horse started to get really strong, her pony. And she said, stop, to her sister, and her sister didn't stop, which is fine. Like, now we've learnt the lesson that stop means stop. And her horse took off and bolted, and came, and I saw it unfolding before my eyes, but knew I couldn't really save her, because if I was to go after her horse. Anyway, the horse circled and came back, and literally at a sliding stop, threw it into a fence. And I could tell, mothers always say, how could you tell it was serious? She didn't cry. She was like just crumpled, and there was just this little bit of blood coming out of her nose, and she wouldn't get up. And so Steve was droning at the time. He ran up, we took the horses back, and we took her to emergency. Anyway, it unfolded that she'd lacerated her spleen. So she'd zippered her spleen like pretty much out and had internal bleeding. And I remember sitting in the hospital room at like 3 a.m, and I remember just thinking I was never going to ride again. I wasn't going to let my girls ride again. I was going to sell all the horses and start, playing chess, because I felt as a mother that I have put her in that situation for so many reasons. And it was amazing, because they didn't take her spleen out, because kids' spleens, recover quite well. But those 3 days in that hospital, she was the one giving me the strength, saying, Mum, it could have happened at home. I'm going to ride again. It's okay. And, it was a real moment for her, because I didn't know if she would get on again, and I don't blame her. Anyway, she couldn't ride for 6 weeks, and then I changed, obviously, the pony, and we put her on one of my beautiful old polo mares. And from that moment, she is literally just, flown, in terms of she just can't get enough of it, which is quite startling, to be fair. You know, so yeah, and then Birdie also does a bit of eventing, and Pops and I just go trail riding. We keep it really simple. And she just picks flowers and sings to the, you know, the clouds and the trees as we ride along, which is really cool.
That's so cool. Finn sounds like there should be a children's book written about Finn and just how fierce she is.
Yeah, fierce, we call it
I
that,
would,
yeah.
I think I would read it to myself every night.
Yeah. The trials and tribulations.
Yeah. What recommendations do you have for parents? I think being a parent with a child that rides horses in any discipline can be so nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
And I can imagine having, you know, if that discipline happens to be eventing, but honestly, any discipline, there can be like so much nervousness around that. And, you know, you want to protect them and shelter them, but you want to let them have these experiences that are so true to their heart and teaching them important things. Yeah. So what do you think about parenting a horse lover?
Yeah, no, I think about it all the time because I'm riding with Poppy, and I feel like that I have a lot to give on this topic that I don't know where I can put the information. But, you know, when Finn started doing cross-country events, I was like this, hiding behind a tree. And then a really good girlfriend of mine who's got 6 kids, you know, her kids were a lot older, said, Kate, you have given your girls the tools. You've done the lessons. You've done all the training. You know that they're on safe horses, that your job is that, and you've done it. And then you just have to let go. And it's so, so true. Like, you know, lessons keep them safe, you know, clinics, and then the horses. So I think there's a level of that. And then I think it's a matter of them, as I said at the start, is just having fun and going at their pace is super, super important. Finn had an accident before that accident. And I remember, you know, she was a kid that was cantering around and fine. And she had an accident and it really knocked the wind out of her. And we put her on our oldest horse, and I had to lead her. And I found that really hard. Like, I found that I was like, come on, you can canter. What's wrong with you? This horse isn't going to do anything wrong. And I wasn't, you know, the best version of a mother at that stage. And I remember Laura, who works with me, she saying how nervous rider she was, and that you have to go at the pace of that child. You cannot push them any further than that. And so I just surrendered where Finn was at that stage, and she came back to it and she got her confidence back. So it's, you know, I think for me, my kids teach me the most that I could ever probably learn every day. And essentially the underlining thing is surrendering. So I think that's, you know, a concoction of that, and you will get a kid that's really happy. And you're right, that like Pops wants to chase cattle. So if she wants to chase cattle, then that's okay. And like Birdie's not competitive. She goes for the social scene, and that's okay too, you know? So, and also, like, I need to model when I get off out of a dressage ring and it hasn't gone that well, not to have that, oh, well, it's okay. I'm like, I can say, I'm really disappointed. I feel a bit sad, you know, and sit with that feeling rather than, you know, and another coach of mine taught me that is when the girls finish riding, just ask them, how did that feel? Rather than going, that was great. Or don't be putting words in their mouth. Just say, how did that feel? How did Jinxie feel? You know, and I think all of that will help people sort of navigate it, because it is a really tricky space. You know, it's not something, you know, and I try actually not to get involved. Like, I don't sort of try and get involved in all the, I don't know if it's the same in America, but the gossipy stuff. I just try and step myself out, and I you know, I try and really just be there for the girls. It's hard.
When you're asking how did that feel instead of like amazing job or like, oh no, are you doing that so that they can have their own self-reflection? Is that the purpose of it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that really helps, because the other thing is, you know, I don't know if it's the same for you, but I'll do a dressage test and it will feel amazing. And then I'll go and look at the score and I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe that wasn't that great. Or I watch the video and go, oh, maybe that wasn't that great. But wait, shouldn't we just be holding on to that feeling rather than actually looking at, you know, relating it to the result? So I want to try and keep them innocent with that feeling for as long as I can before the scores and the leaderboard and all of that have to sort of dilute it.
I really like that.
Mm.
Okay, I have a couple of questions that I will prioritize since we're getting very close to the top of the hour. First one is back to the business. What advice do you have for aspiring equestrian entrepreneurs or just aspiring entrepreneurs, people who have the entrepreneurial spirit, like clearly you have had ingrained in you, or you naturally have ingrained in you?
So say that again, Jessa. So what advice I can give people that are entrepreneurs in this space? I guess be dogged at the start. So, you know, I think at the end of the day, and I know it's probably the same in America, is anything can succeed in the countries that we live in. We're very, very lucky. So even if it's a side hustle, you know, just say yes to everything, and, you know, work equals success. I know that sounds really cliche, but for me, it does. And, you know, be open to feedback. Like, I've always had a very thick skin to feedback. I love feedback. So I think that's, in my industry, I find sometimes, you know, with ride partners, if they don't take on feedback, that I just find it really hard to work with them. But if they're like, give me feedback so I can do better, then they're always going to be, you know, they're always going to be successful.
I love that advice. Yeah, being able to receive feedback is a very important skill.
Yeah.
Okay, I have some more like rapid fire style questions.
Okay.
If you lived anywhere else in the world that you and your family had to go settle, where would you choose to go settle other than Australia?
Oh, that's easy. Kenya. It's my heartland. It's my
Do you have any mantras that you bring yourself back to? You can say no.
Everything's always working out for me. I always say that, and that the universe, you know, is happening for me, not against me. Always. Like, even if a horse hurts himself, I'm like, this is happening for me. You know, and that we're divinely protected always, our children, and, you know, Steve and I and our clients.
I have a quote in my office that says, life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you.
Yeah, amen.
Amen.
Yeah.
If you had to recommend a book or two to a friend, do any come to mind?
Oh, I've just read The Covenant of Water, and it's amazing, and it's set in India. That would probably be a really good one. And anything by Abraham Hicks, I absolutely love, or Eckhart Tolle, or Marianne Williamson. So yeah, that's a bit left of field.
There's a lot of reading to get into after listening to those recommendations.
Yeah.
Okay, my final question is an impossible one, but if Kinsey and I, my sister, called you and said, we need to go on one of these trips, which one would you send us on first?
Ooh. Okay. Well, you both can ride, right? You like advanced riders? Okay.
Yes, and I'm trying to manifest this.
Okay, good. Well, let's do it together, because that, you know, I can definitely be the portal for that.
Yeah.
So there's two, but I'll tell you the first one. I would say Tanzania. So the Serengeti migration ride, which we're doing in January, because we call it only for advanced riders. And you're literally on ex-polo ponies. So they're nifty 15-hand, 15-2 ponies. And you gallop, you jump logs because the elephants push them over. The giraffe are looking down on you through their eyelashes, and you get charged by elephant. Nighttime, you know, you jump off your horse and there's a cold gin and tonic sitting there for you. And it's, you know, eat dinner out under the stars. And then you're moving every day. So there's a purpose to your riding. And, you know, it's the Maasai that you will brush, you know, that you will come across, the culture. So I would normally have said Kenya, but it's getting a little bit built up. So for me, it would be, the Serengeti ride in Tanzania. You guys would love it.
Oh, that's amazing. It sounds incredible. And I'm sure that people listening to this will be interested in learning more. So where can they find more information on Globetrotting?
Yeah, so people can just go over to our website, globetrotting.com.au. Don't get overwhelmed by the choice of rides. There's a filter where you can choose country, ability, what type of ride. There's location rides, where you're based at one, like a castle for 7 days, or there's rides like I just explained where you ride from A to B. So that would be, and then Laura, Rowena, or Amy will be there to literally hold your hand through the whole process to make sure that it's, exactly what you want.
That's incredible. And if nothing else, you guys go to the website and just let your heart be filled up by that. A beautiful video on the website.
Yeah, it's virtual travel at its best.
Well, Kate, I really can't thank you enough. I'm just so grateful I got to spend an hour with you. I feel energized and inspired and just lucky to know you. And I do hope that we can meet in person one day.
I do too.
Mercedes is in the chat. She just said, "You're a joy to listen to. Thank you so much for sharing your story." So Mercedes, thank you for making this happen too, and bringing more incredible people into our realm. But Kate, thank you for taking the time and starting your day with us, even with, I'm sure, the girls going in a million directions and other things to do. We're so appreciative of you.
Thank you. Thanks for the time. And thank you for, as I said at the start, I am a huge fan of what you guys are doing. And yeah, we're flying the flag here in Australia for you. So well done for you both.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that.
Ferocious and starting your program as well.
Thank you. Well, have a wonderful day. And to everyone listening, have a wonderful evening or day.